Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Grace Amon, Project Manager for Dix Parks Plaza and Play. I work in the Parks Department for the City of Raleigh. That is the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resource Department. We're so excited for you to join us tonight as we are in our second public meeting to talk about the Plaza and Play for Dix Park. We have an exciting night where the design team is going to give you a design update. And I want to introduce who is presenting with us tonight before we get started. So I'll start in the top left. We have Missy Ablin with 313C. She is with our public engagement consultant team. Next, we have Hillary Archer with MVVA, or known as Michael Van Valkenburg Associates. Next is Kate Pierce with the City of Raleigh Dix Park team. We have Jay Kumar, who is our Vice Chair of the Dix Park Community Committee. Next, you will see me. We have Max DeRusso with MVVA, Lauren Weldeshofer with the City of Raleigh Dix Park team. We have Tom Sherry, also with 313C, Matthew Urbanski with MVVA, and Shauna Overdorf, our chair of the Dix Park Community Committee. So I want to send a thanks to everybody for joining us and making this meeting possible. The purpose of tonight's meeting is we will talk about the role of the community leadership and participation. We're going to give you a update on the design of the project, and of course we want to hear from you. For our schedule tonight, we will do an introduction to discuss the community leadership. We will spend about 35 minutes on the design update, and then we will have 30 minutes at the end of the meeting for a live Q&A. So we want to hear from you. At any time, please submit your comments and questions into the comment box. We will be using these to talk about at the Q&A at the end. And then all comments that will be received through that comment box will be addressed in next week on publicinput.com if we are not able to get to all the questions. We want to send out a thank you to the Dix Park Conservancy. This design project is done in partnership with them. They are the nonprofit partner for Dix Park, and they are funding the design process for the Plaza and Play. So thank you to the Conservancy. And to give you some context, you can see in the green is Dorothea Dix Park. Our project area is the Plaza and Play, which is the area in blue. The circle that goes around it is about 1 mile out from the Plaza and Play site. And so you can see the proximity that we have to downtown, I-40, neighboring parks. You can also see on this image where the Plaza and Play lies within Dix Park and is along Lake Wheeler Road, and how close it will be to the neighboring Fuller Heights neighborhood and provide future connections into downtown, to the farmers market, and to I-40. This is a somewhat busy area of town. We have the Western Boulevard BRT project that the planning department is working on. We are working on connections to John Chavis Memorial Park with the Dix to Chavis project. The areas in pink within the park are phase 1 projects. Healing Transition and Green, which is right next to Plaza and Play, is also planning for some site expansion. And the State Farmers Market has recently adopted a master plan in the last few years. And then in purple, I will mention the Dix Edge study area. So this project is being run by the City of Raleigh's planning department. You can see how the project area is adjacent to Dix Park, but in particular the Plaza and Play area. During the development of the master plan for Dorothea Dix Park, City Council realized that the park project was going to have some impacts on the neighboring area, and allocated money to conduct the study area project. It is currently underway. If you are interested in the following this project, which will be creating a small area plan and looking at things like streetscape for the area, please go to the project webpage, which is raleighNC.gov/dix.edge. They are in what they are calling their visioning sessions, which are a series of meetings coming up in February. We heard your concerns. Now let's find some solutions. So I encourage you to participate in those meetings as well. Our project site is also the site of the temporary dog park in Dix Park. We know this is a very well-loved space by those that use the dog park. And the park staff has been working on finding another location for a dog park in Dix Park. We have heard the things that you love on the park and are working to create another space within the park before the Plaza and Play site goes under construction, so that there is another site for dogs in Dix Park. You can see here the project area and how it runs right along Lake Wheeler Road. A majority of the site used to be patient recreation space when the hospital was open, and so you can see remnants of a baseball diamond, some tennis courts, and a walking track. I also point out the House of Many Porches, which the design team will give you an update on. And our design schedule. So here we are in schematic design. We're on the second public meeting, as I mentioned. We had our first public meeting in October. We will have our third public meeting in the spring while we are in design development phase. And following that will be construction documentation. So the entire portion of this part of the project will take us to spring, summer of 2022. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Kumar, our Vice Chair of the Community Committee, and Shauna Overdorf, our Chair of the Community Committee, to talk about why this process matters. So thank you, Jay and Shauna.
Thanks so much, Grace. And yeah, Shauna, please jump in at any point, but we're just really excited to talk to you all right now. And why does this matter? And I was spending some time today trying to get my thoughts together. And as we turn over a new year, I was reminded of one of my favorite poems. It's called The Mower by Philip Larkin. I'm not going to read it to you, though it's great. You should look it up. But in it, there's a line in it that says, we should be careful of each other. We should be kind while there's still time. And during this pandemic, and as we are in this public meeting in a new and virtual way, it's important that the role of public engagement isn't lost. And that's why it's so important. This project will outlive many of us. It'll be a symbol of Raleigh and our vision. And so it's important that we get the input so that our vision for what we want as this city and what we want as this park is realized for forever and forevermore. Next slide, please. So what is the role of public engagement? And you can see here, we've done it in a variety of ways. It's through events, it's through meetings, it's through talking to each of you. And it's really important to understand that there are kind of three core questions that come to mind when we think about this. It's one, how does this park fit into our vision of Raleigh? Two, how do we make sure that that vision resonates? And three, how do we ensure that the concerns, the opportunities, the beliefs of the public are heard so that we can rally around that shared vision to really accelerate and advance this park and make it as great as it can be? Next slide, please. So the role of public engagement, you see here, there's a variety of different organizations, a variety of different groups, and you all and all of us are part of it. And so together we can make this park something really meaningful. We have the design team, MVVNA, who have the expertise and are the subject matter experts. We have the public, who are the subject matter experts of their city. Focus groups who can provide content and feedback towards a specific concern or area of focus. Leadership to ensure that the process keeps moving forward, and the community committee to ensure that all of the voices are represented. And that's been really important and something that I am really proud of. Next slide, please. Because you can see here that over the last year or 6 months, really, there have been a variety of different ways for each of those various levels to engage in this project. The community committee has met a couple of times. We've had a public meeting, we've had focus groups on this, and the leadership committee has continued to ensure that this project moves forward. Next slide, please. And so through that process, we've had feedback from across the city. We've been really lucky to hear from everywhere from Zebulon all the way over to Friendship and Apex. So A to Z covered to talk about this park and make sure that those issues and views are well heard and captured, so that the view and the vision and the beliefs that we want this park to be are heard and realized. Next slide, please. And it's important that it's not just the ambitions, but the concerns as well. And you can see here, we're hearing about all of that. I think you see there's a large and impressive play fountain. People have specific ideas of what they want to see. There are kind of emotional components, a new place to come together with diverse offerings. There are concerns, potential changes in the adjacent neighborhood. And the Edge study is a great example of how we're hearing that and realizing that we need to address those concerns head on from the beginning of the project, so that we can have clear understandings that if there are problems, we have a solution, or we have a joint understanding of how we address that and move forward. And I think that is really important as these questions come through today. Grayson mentioned a key purpose is to hear from you and hear from all of us what we want. And we really, truly mean that. And I think the actions to date have really spoken to that. And I'm going to turn it over to Shauna, who's going to recap a little bit more in depth about some of the focus groups and where we're going from here. So Shauna?
Thank you, Jay. And thank you, MVVA, for playing the conductor behind the scenes. And so just briefly before we get into the meat of today's conversation, we just wanted to focus or to share where the focus groups have been and with shaping the design, and how public input truly has driven the design discussions, allowing us to think boldly in creating a space that honors the past and inspires what can become possible. I think that is really important. As Jay has already alluded to, for many of us, the end of this project will not be during our lifetime. I will not date myself, but I hope to see a further iteration of this. And I'm grateful that both Jay and I have been a part of this planning process, along with the city and the Conservancy and MVVA, from master planning to now. Next slide, please. And so again, here's another timeline for everyone watching tonight. Here's where we are. And I think, from master planning to adoption to today, you can see how much work has gone into this process, but how the community has been a part of every single step along the way, and will continue to be that. Jay and I are here tonight to really to show that we are faces that are a part of leadership, moving us forward in collaboration. And one of our primary roles is serving in leadership with the community committee with Dix Park is to be the conduit for your voices. And so later on, you'll see me pop back in and how we will encourage you to remain a part of conversations, to let us know your opinions, your fears, your concerns, and your hopes. And with that, Matt from MVVA is going to take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shauna, and hello, everyone. Looking forward to getting to finally talk to you all about what we've put together so far, so onward. One of my favorite things about the master plan was I thought we came up with great principles, these three main principles for the master plan: build from what's here, open up and connect, and offer something for everyone. And we use that to structure the presentation and, kind of show its connection back to the master plan. The master plan concept for this area was that it would be a front door and an invitation into one of the main entrances into the space, and that it would contain plaza elements and play elements. And that's the master plan concept drawing there, overlaid on the aerial. So into the design. So starting from building from what is here, we're looking at our beautiful, many parts of the site are already like a park with beautiful trees and topography and slopes and hills and views. And so we want to incorporate that. I hope we are going to be surprised and excited about how we're going to do that. So here's our plan. Now, don't worry. You don't have to memorize it. I'm going to come back to it many times to show you the different parts. And we've kind of broken it down. It's got many parts to it. So we've broken it down into four major landscape types, if you will. The yellow, which we'll do first, is the entry landscape. That includes the parking area along the road, kind of the public invitation along Lake Wheeler. The next is the civic kind of gathering spaces that make up this kind of purpley blue space that goes through the middle of the scheme. Then we have the play areas, more directly associated with play, and those are the pinkish areas. And then what we're calling a collection of gardens, and that's in the turquoise blue. So we'll get to that as well. So here's a big idea. One of the things that we knew was this grove, this beautiful grove of trees, which has played such an important historic role. It's really the important historic landscape, designed landscape of the hospital. How could that be connected and incorporated into the site? Here's that beautiful Harvey Hill, and events have been out there. It's got great views back to downtown. So our idea was to actually expand the site to connect to Harvey Hill, take away some impediments, and basically draw that whole part in, and in a way make it part of phase one. So in a way, making the first project much bigger than the 12.5 acres originally was going to be. So here's a way of starting to understand how that works. We're looking at on Pico Drive, which is, and we're looking south on it. And so go to the next slide, please. You could see highlighted here, Anderson, which is the old nurse's dorm, is to the left. The House of Many Porches is in the middle. Pico Drive is right in front of us. So if this is what's there now, and Pico Drive is sort of separating our site, which is on the right, which is with the Grove, which is on the left, our big idea is to remove the drive, make a path connection through here that will actually become part of the loop promenade of the park eventually, and make a stronger visual connection in a House of Many Porches, and just merge these two landscapes together. It's sort of like taking advantage of what we have in a great way, building from what is there. So another principle, of course, was opening up and connecting. The park site was actually a hospital and was not open to the public that much. So here it is along Lake Wheeler Drive. We're going to kind of change this whole dynamic here. So we're looking at lots of different modes, different ways that people get to the park. We got a lot of feedback in the public process about this. Both, so we have vehicular, we have pedestrian, we have bicycle, we have people coming on transit, and we have lots of different ways to come in, because you really don't want just one entrance into a space. Driving was what people said they would mostly use to get here, but biking and walking were also important. And also there are people that will come from the bus, and we're looking at planning and expanding, making a new bus stop right in front of the site. So looking at vehicular first, we have several moments where we're making a new entry drive into a parking lot that's on the west side here, and then also some other moments where you can get dropped off along Lake Wheeler, come in by the House of Many Porches in Anderson, and also drive in through the hospital site itself. Bike arrival is through various moments along here. We're going to be extending a multi-use path that will connect the Rocky Branch Trail with the Walnut Creek Trail eventually. And you can see that coming in green. So bike arrival is really going to be a great thing to have here, and we'll have bike parking, things to facilitate that. Pedestrian arrival, we're going to actually walk up on some of these yellow paths here in a minute, and I'll give you a sense of how it feels to walk along them. But these are key moments for pedestrian arrival. We've made several along Lake Wheeler. And then just to give you a sense of how very seriously we took the accessibility challenge, this blue just highlights all the completely accessible pathways and areas that aren't green spaces that are incorporated in the plan. So it is really saturated with accessibility all throughout. So now we're going to look at the entry landscape, what was highlighted in yellow, and just some of the things that we heard that we were able to incorporate into this area. There was a lot of comments about parking and how it was important to have it, but how it shouldn't overly drive the design. How, you know, opportunities for North Carolina wildflowers would be a great thing, and could be a sunny open area for that kind of things. Bringing people together. There was a lot of plant advocates in our outreach groups, and bringing people together around plants. Finding places for food festivals, which could happen in the parking lot area, for instance. And be right there next to the park, and make a selection that is beautiful and diverse. Now there is something I like as something people want us to do, as well as pollinators and birds. We have all those opportunities here. So here we are, and you know, one of the things about the hospital ground site is it's a little bit simplified right now. Very much just big trees, which are beautiful, and a lot of mown grass. And so a lot of our idea is to bring a lot of natural complexity into the site. And so I'm going to show you a series of these sketchy kind of drawings that give you a sense of the ambiance and the feel, and some of the texture and the ideas as we're kind of working them through. So these kind of have a feeling of being just taken right off the drawing board in the idea sessions, and they're very fresh and just put together to give you guys as good of impression as we can at this point in schematic design. Next, we're going to look at the civic landscapes. That was that kind of purple series of spaces that move through the middle. And this is a place where we could really start to address that charge of offering something for everyone, because there's a series of spaces that can happen. When we talked about these elements and asked about them in the last public meeting, people talked about, we talked about iconic elements, deep sight lines, grand entry, civic fountain. People kind of voted on how important each of these kinds of things were, and we really feel like we've been able to incorporate them into the design in a totally unique way. Looking in a little bit more detail, one of the things we heard a lot, let's have play for all ages and abilities, and I'll show you a spot where we've incorporated a swing terrace overlooking the Grove, and that's over on the right side there. We want to invite people to have their own experiences as well as be in groups, and be together with their fellow citizens. Put a heart in the park, and the Fountain Plaza is really meant to be that. Preserve those views, and in fact we've been able to even enhance those views in the scheme. Create spaces for imagination, intimate performance spaces, and the always so popular provide adequate bathrooms. All of these things we've been able to do, and they kind of appear along this. So our parking lot, the idea of the parking is it's incorporated into the landscape. We're working around some of the big existing trees, and then we'll bring in new trees. We'll make rain gardens for infiltration and beautiful North Carolina landscape. This is a parking lot we made in Dallas for a presidential library. And now here is a vision of coming to the top of a terrace as we're moving. If you look at the little plan down here, you'll see that we've come from the parking, and we started to walk east, and we get to the top of a grand stair, and there's lateral paths that also take you down, but the grand stair can work as a kind of place to sit also, and it overlooks this distant view. So I'll point out a few things that you just to make sure you see them here. One of the things is, I might get my drawing pencil working. So you can see the view to downtown because we're from an elevated point up here. And we see across the existing Grove landscape and the new pieces that we've made there. To the left is this very intriguing element, this kind of civic fountain, and that is inspired by some of the natural landscapes of North Carolina that we've seen. We want to use native North Carolina stone It's kind of got a waterfall effect on it and splashing water coming out of the pavement. So really a nice place to cool off. And so we can move to the next slide, Hillary, please. Oh, wait, there was one other element I just wanted to point out. And then as you can also see, there's this intriguing gateway or doorway right here, and that is to draw your eye up to what is a kind of play space beyond. Now, if you went down the grand stair and kind of turned around and looked, you could see people sitting there and just kind of looking at the view, seeing people moving around in the plaza, or maybe they're watching somebody playing the piano or doing another small performance. This could be a great place for puppet shows and other small scale things. It could have theatrical performances here as well. And then it kind of embraced on both sides with beautiful greenery, which could add a lot of seasonal variation and bring in the native landscape on both sides. And then we move down the stair, we get closer to this kind of concept drawing of our fountain idea. And there's a stone, feels like a natural stone escarpment in a way. You'll see kids up on top and be intrigued how'd they get up there. Water could be activated on some kind of a program. A waterfall effect could happen, creating this kind of splashing effect, a great place to kind of run around in the water and get cooled off in the hot summer. And then to the right, as I mentioned earlier, is this kind of intriguing kind of gateway. There's a little bridge here that you might see a kid looking out over from the top of. And just so you know, if you went to the left here, where you would go actually to the public bathrooms that are just off to the side there, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. If we keep moving forward along that axis, we went across the plaza, we'd get to the performance lawn area, the extension of the grove. We could see people lying out, having picnics. There might be a bigger kind of performance here in the evening. This might be a great place for flying kites and some other kinds of festivals and things like that. So the plaza becomes this heart that is then connected to the kind of very important green space that you already have there on the Dix Park site. And then if you moved further along and now look at the little plan here, you can see right next to Harvey, we have this idea of this big civic swing terrace. And, you know, this idea of incorporating play for people of all ages. Swings are, you know, really great for that. And we're looking at all different types for different kinds of accessibility for everyone, for adults, for children, even we're looking at swings that people can go on together, big kind of basket swings and things like that. So we'll show you more detail on that as we develop it. But the swing terrace is a way of bringing play out and connecting it to the grove. So what were some of the things that we talked about when we were talking about play in the public meeting last time? And some of the things that came up that got high votes: nature play got high votes, imaginative play, playful objects, and water play. People kind of let us know what they thought about each of those. Another important theme that we've pursued and came up in public meetings is making sure play for all ages and all abilities, really making the space inclusive to people with different levels of challenge and different ages. So it's not just for little kids and you know less exciting that way. Although little kids are good too, we like them as well. So the playground is highlighted here in the pink, and some of the things that came up in more detail: incorporate nature throughout. That is a big theme of what we've done and continue to work on. Playgrounds take an incredible amount of work and detail, and we're very much at the schematic level on that, which means an early design level. One space connecting all ages would be great, and a water play area is a great thing for that because all ages can use that. Add artificial streams and play fountains. That was a great suggestion that we've incorporated. Year-round water features. Celebrate North Carolina and Raleigh's unique geology, and people pointed at us some of these beautiful natural sites that had waterfalls that inspired us. Create adjacent spaces for parents, very important observation, and we've incorporated that into the play as well. and also play spaces with different levels. And that's a great idea for kind of creating a lot of excitement and also getting more into a space, more fun into a space. So as we're, this is now, if you look at the key plan here, so this is Lake Wheeler down here. And what we've done is imagine we just gotten off of a bus now and we're walking north towards the plaza. We'd see this kind of plaza space beyond. We might see some play towers sticking out up high. We might see the sparkle of the waterfall glistening in the sun. Remember, it will be coming right towards the sun because the sun would be above you or to the left or to the right of you if you were coming here during the day. So it would be kind of sparkling and glistening there. Maybe off to the left, you could see the grand staircase and maybe a group was watching a little puppet show or something there. And then there's this beautiful kind of open grove of trees featuring a lot of native North Carolina trees, maybe some southern magnolias and other oaks and other beautiful trees that you have there in North Carolina. We're so excited of using. And you just have come through this kind of more open North Carolina prairie garden kind of effect with butterflies and more brightly colored flowers. And as you walked up, you'd come up to the fountain, and one of the neat things about the fountain is we want to make a waterfall that you could actually walk behind. And so that is sort of what we're starting to depict in this conceptual drawing here. So the water be coming down off of this kind of mysterious, cliffy kind of thing. And it would be pouring down, and we're working with great fountain designers to help make this work and be really refreshing and very, very, very a lot of fun to play with, or just to look at and watch kids play in, which is always just about as much fun as doing it yourself. Then, as you can see in the key plan, we've now entered the playground. We've walked around the wall and we've entered the playground, and we see that there's several features in the playground, but this is a kind of bowl-like feature which would have some towers and connected by bridges, aerial bridges in it. We could make these many of these connections handicap accessible, so you could even take a wheelchair through some of them. We'd have climbers, we'd have slides coming down slopes, but also it's not your typical playground. It's not your typical playground because of the elements, because of the materials. But then it's also really embedded in a beautiful, lush green landscape that would be changing with the seasons, really giving us different things to look at all throughout the year. And it's sort of a hallmark of a lot of our play spaces is that it really incorporates the landscape and the experience of nature into the play. Another place in the playground, you can see it highlighted in that detailed plan here, is something we're calling the sand bowl. Right now, it's at the bottom of a water play area that would go down behind the wall or down a hill, and it would be a kind of great hangout spot for little kids, as well as have seating built in for parents to sit in the shade and watch the kids play. We'll have shade structures incorporated in here as well. It'd be wonderful to have little imaginative play elements like little houses and other things like that, as well as platforms for sitting on and water elements, so kids can really kind of get messy in the sand, mixing, making their sand pies and all of that kind of thing. So that was right here in the plan. The waterfall is here in the plan, and this whole area through here would be a water play area that would kind of go down through the landscape here, connecting those two together. And then this is that area that had the two towers in it. It's kind of like a play bowl. So yeah, this is just highlighting some of those elements. We have slides built into a hill. This is an idea of a deck that parents could hang out on, and is a connection, and the slides would actually go from a high point here and connect underneath this space here. So the kind of exciting kind of over and under kind of quality. Climbing structures for building upper body strength and giving kids challenges. Slides built into hills. And then the water play area could have little kind of places where water is shunted down little streams, as it was suggested in the public meeting, have little dams that control it and ways of redirecting it and things like that. Then we have a big idea of, again, inspired by some of the rural landscapes that what we saw and we were directed to by people in the who gave suggestions in the public meeting. We want to make a little mill, a little play mill, like with a water wheel, and kids could kind of redirect water through chutes to make the water wheel go around, kind of learning without actually being aware that they're learning. It's sort of a kind of a water lab built into a natural setting. And then the sandbox at the bottom there. So just give you a little sense of what we mean by some of these terms: imaginative play, making spaces that really inspire kids, surprise people by their kind of the wonderful opportunities, the kind of juxtapositions of elements that they aren't necessarily going to find in their, playing in their own backyard, for instance, and creative places to run into people in new ways, like this water play area, which it's got calm areas, it's got raucous areas, it's got and everything in between. And little kids, you could see kids of every age in here. Playful objects, whether it be kind of like this big wooden snake that we had made for our park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or other types of elements that would really become engaging for kids and beautiful for adults also to look at, beautiful craftsmanship, for instance. And this is a mirror maze, which we might find a place for in the park. This is kind of just a wonderful imaginative space. It's a little disorienting with these beautiful polished stainless steel mirrors that reflect the landscape and create this kind of kaleidoscope. It's like a human scale kaleidoscope in the landscape. Nature play was a big theme that people brought up. It makes sense in North Carolina with all the beautiful wood and natural materials and beautiful weather that you have all year there. So really engaging with the natural landscape, strong interest in that. And you can see how we've used methods here in our garden, in the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens here, to allow for it to be quite natural and also be a play space. Caretaker seating is really important. This is our Teardrop Park in New York City, where you kind of incorporate really comfortable places for adults to be with kids, or just, reading the newspaper, or setting out lunch, or whatever it would be, to kind of make it a wonderful day and have them be relaxed and not worried about, keeping next to the kid every second, letting the kid kind of explore on their own. Now, right, oddly, we were able to incorporate a comfort station right in the middle of the scheme, and we've done that with Hobgood Architects, who are fantastic architects from Raleigh, by actually incorporating it literally into the landscape. And I'll try to explain that to you a little bit here using, this is some of their concept drawings that they showed us. This is actually from a Roman painting, but the idea of a kind of oculus or an opening to the sky, which would be over the public space of a series of cabanas. So if you look at this thing on the right here, and you see these rooms arrayed around you think of each of these as sort of like a little changing room or a cabana. It has a bathroom, has a sink, has a changing table, and enough room for a couple of people to go in there. Like if mom wanted to change kids' bathing suits or something like that with them, enough room for people to get in there, and obviously to turn wheelchairs around and things like that. So there's a series of cabanas that goes around in an array around a public space, and all of that is actually built into the landscape. So here's a view the Hobgoods did of that idea. So you imagine those doors are into the individual cabanas. And then there's this kind of common space in the middle, which is open to the sky and actually is open to the playground above. So there's a kind of parapet wall there, and people could look down and see people going in and out below. So it's very open to the air. It's not stuffy, or it lets sun in. It would have a great dynamic relationship with the sun as it moved across the space. So this is part of their study model. So this model is a little, they're kind of working on the structure of it. So this is what would be underground. So this part here is open to the sky with the tree in the middle, like I just showed you. And then these are the cabanas, which the roof of which is not shown. And it would be covered, those would be covered with landscape. So you wouldn't see those. You'd only see the open circle part. So they're still working on that. That's a fantastic idea, though. Very great for schematic to design to have that. Then the gardens, the last part. We are, and this is really a great opportunity to have all kinds of things for different people. There is all different types of gardens incorporated. Some of the comments: I look forward to a place for gardens, add places to sit and to wander, incorporate concessions, and we're looking at the House of Many Porches for that. Integrate site history into the park. We have an idea for how to do that in the garden around the House of Many Porches experience. It is more than just a playground, and you can see we can definitely do that with this design. Go big in picnic areas and shade, and we have a whole series of picnic gardens, or it's labeled a picnic grove here, and reach as many as people as possible with food. There's a lot of interest in food in Raleigh, and having a great places to eat in together in a park is an important thing. So in the plan, the detailed plan, you see there's this kind of main path or promenade, as we call it, going up, connecting the plaza, and eventually we'll go right up to the middle of the park someday. But will be this. The idea is it would be planted with tall tulip poplar trees or some other beautiful tall tree, and also incorporate southern magnolias, for instance. And then laterally on either side of that main path, as you walked up, would be these beautiful picnic groves, these kind of arrangements of tables and chairs and grills that are in these shaded groves. Good visual proximity to the path, so you can kind of see what's open and where you might want to be able to grab a table. Lots and lots of tables is the idea. So, you know, there's not just 3 tables and they get full and then you're waiting around, but maybe have quite a few tables to really kind of increase the chances of being able to just sit down and pull up your cooler. So here's that detailed plan of that promenade that we were just looking up this path here, and we were seeing the kind of rows of trees on either side. Then the picnic tables laterally on each side, shaded pathways on each side, adequate seating both along the promenade and in the picnic areas, and then grills, which are indicated with these little trifoliate things here, which would bring people together. Cooking together in public is a great way to kind of get to know people and have fun together. Now back over to the House of Many Porches. We've been working with a really excellent Joseph Opperman architects, and Joe restored the state capitol, for instance, with his team, historic preservation architects, and they've really shown us how the House of Many Porches actually had more porches, and some of them were lost over time, and they've been looking at ways to restore them and bring the proper kind of finish back to them, like the detailing and things like that. And so we just kind of walked around the house here. They've done very careful archiving of everything and kind of recreation and interviews of people that lived in the houses and everything. So it's been very thorough, you know, very, very responsible in terms of the history. And then bringing this in, it's a beautiful little house. It looks like it's in a children's fairy tale. With this beautiful slate roof. So it's going to be a great addition. Outside that, we see opportunity for gardens that kind of feel nice next to the house in terms of having almost a kind of residential scale to them. And we've been looking at ways of incorporating history into this by bringing in physical markers into the park and into the garden that you would almost go around to kind of learn something, and then maybe those markers can tell us something just by reading them, and then they could also make connections to people that were shaped by the park and the landscape that was here before the hospital and after, including the little girl shown here is somebody that lived in the house for for a long time, and we've actually been able to interview her. This becomes this way of honoring history and incorporating it into the landscape in a way that is respectful. And doing it through a series of markers, and this is something that we'll continue to detail and do outreach in terms of what stories we want to be able to incorporate into this section. Another idea that can be part of this garden, but would be maybe infused throughout, is the idea of incorporating art. We have art ideas that are in the works, or kind of we're starting to mull over them. One is the idea of really tapping into the local woodworking and wood crafting tradition of North Carolina, and also there's lots of good trees. So the idea of maybe working with our local craftsmen and artisans to make beautiful elements that are incorporated into the park throughout. They could help us, for instance, make beautiful tables out of salvaged wood and trees. We could make other elements. Oh, excuse me, sorry. And then perhaps the house, for instance, could be a place for rotating art installations. There could be rooms there that could be public rooms that could be used that way. And there also could be spots out in the landscape that can become places for rotating art exhibits as well. So all of those are ideas that we're looking at as we think more about the design. And so the idea really, which was captured in the Plaza and Play name, was the idea of balancing places for playing and for gathering, and really trying to incorporate something for everyone. And we hope that you agree that we feel like we're really going in the right direction with the schematic design. One other thing is we have thought carefully, being the master plan stewards, of how would this become part of the master plan eventually. And some of you may remember that there was this idea of this big of a promenade that connects the whole top of the hill someday, and that would be incorporated right here in the plan. And then there's all kinds of other neat things to think about, connecting. Could this building become part of a park supporting building someday? There's opportunities for expanding our gardens in this direction. The master plan called out a big parking area right off of the plan up in that area. So expanding parking in that direction. All of these things are carefully worked out so they will dovetail in, and our plan will kind of dovetail with this future, with the future possibilities here. And with that, I've gotten to the end of the schematic design presentation.
Thanks, Matt. Kate Pierce here with the City of Raleigh, and we are going to move into the question and answer portion of the evening. A lot of you have been submitting questions over our Plaza and Play public input site, and we look forward to reaching them. And I'm sorry, we also have a four-legged visitor who's not at the dog park right now, wanting to participate. So our first question will go to Grayson. Can you talk about some of the sustainability measures that have been incorporated into the design?
Sure, thanks, Kate. Also, hi to your dog, Lily. Yes, some of the sustainability measures that we're working on, one in particular is green stormwater. So what is green stormwater? That means that we are designing the site in a way that the water is infiltrated onto the site, meaning it goes into the ground on site as opposed to being piped away. This is also done in a way that plants are incorporated that can withstand being very wet, and then also sometimes being dry on depending on how much rainfall we've had. And one example of this would be the parking lot that was shown. And so currently the design is looking at taking the runoff from the parking lot and treating it on site in the open space areas, or the non-paved surface areas in between the parking stalls.
Yeah, Matt, would you add anything to the kind of sustainability question from a design perspective?
There's, sustainability could be thought of so many different ways. One is durability. You don't want to make something that, will have to be rebuilt or thrown away in some way or another. And we think a lot about that. So we want to use a lot of natural materials and durable materials, beautiful native stone. So we've been trying to make sure that we can afford all of that in the budget, but also get enough of it that it will be beautiful and durable and be there for generations. So that's one. That's one thing. Also, recycling materials is a big sustainable item. So the idea of reusing the house, how beautiful is that? With the so that's a kind of fundamentally sustainable idea, and I'm very proud of that. And I think it will be great for people to go and have that, that vicarious thrill of going into somebody's, what was a private house at one point in time, or a doctor's house, or whatever it might have been, somebody that worked at the hospital, and kind of get that sense of being in a different time and place, and that's a wonderful thing. And then just the natural materials. I think we're going to be able to harvest some trees. Fall down on the site sometimes, and we'll also be able to harvest some trees. And a big idea we have is, can we actually use the trees from the site for some elements on the project? So those are just some of the ideas that we've been mulling over.
Great, thank you. There's a lot of concern about how the park and other city investments are impacting surrounding neighborhoods. And so Jay, Shauna, Grayson, I'll throw it to y'all first, just to talk a little bit about how we're connecting with the community, what the Dix Edge study is doing to ensure that the park impacts benefit the community and don't necessarily negatively impact the community. So Grayson, I'll throw it to you first to talk a little bit about the Edge study, and maybe Jay and Shauna, y'all can jump in. Just talk about how we're working to engage the neighboring community to make sure the park benefits are felt for all.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, it's really great that the City Planning Department is leading the Dix Edge study that is looking at the anticipated changes that will occur and have started to occur some in the areas that are across the street from the park, across from Lake Wheeler Road. They will look at things like, what are some realistic things that the city can do to help with affordable housing? There's a lot of single family homes that are adjacent to this area that are considered naturally occurring affordable housing, or the acronym NOAA. So they are taking a deep dive into what the city has in its ability to do with land use planning and affordable housing to be proactive in some of these things. And then I'll also mention, we've been partnering with the Dix Park Conservancy over the last few months during this project to go out on foot into these areas that are adjacent to the park and put outdoor hangers to advertise that these two projects are happening, and to help educate the public on what the two projects are and what falls within each project. So Shauna or Jay, y'all want to take it from here?
I want to jump in here. So thank you for that question and allowing me some space. For those that don't know, I'm a former nonprofit executive director, and my specialty was on people experiencing homelessness and hunger in our community. And it's something that's very near to me, and one of the reasons why I submitted a request to be able to serve in this capacity and was grateful to be appointed. And so I think that Jay can echo me and probably add a lot more, but making sure that things are communicated and voices are heard and respected is very important to the community. And I think that, we're very focused on all of what accessibility means. And so we are not just putting that in a narrow lens. It is very broad. And I really appreciate Jay for really harping, like he's the one that's really made sure that we've not just had this one siloed effort where that comes in. It is a part of everything that we discuss and we talk about.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Shauna. And I'll be very brief, and then we can move on to other questions. But I think it's critically important to not understate the role of equity in this park. When we talk about a park for all, it really does need to be that. And that's a fundamental principle. And so as we think about these public meetings, as we think about the various committees of the park, the role of the Conservancy, the role of City Council, it needs to be equity in all policy. And so how do we ensure that? And one of the key ways we're doing that is through an equity study. And so the community committee, others from the leadership committee and the city are all working on pulling that together to understand how do we ensure an inclusive and engaging park that truly addresses equity. And by that, we mean all the different facets of equity, from ability to race. I think it's important to acknowledge that. The EDGE study is really a great example of that. Again, when you think about all the different stakeholders and communities on the edge, how do we ensure that prison reentry, healing transitions, a neighborhood, a university, Boylan Heights, each have a very different population and demographic makeup, are heard and welcomed and feel a part of this park? And then when you look at where the input and feedback has come in from the city across the entire Triangle region and beyond, how do we ensure that those voices are also appropriately heard so that this park really is for all and is engaging, inclusive, and feels as though it is reflective of the vast tapestry that makes Raleigh unique and wonderful?
Thanks, Jay. So, Matt mentioned one of our favorite topics was restrooms. I think the other favorite topic that people always like to bring up is parking. And so there is parking on site. There are thoughts about remote parking. Grayson, can you kick us off and just talk a little bit about how we're thinking about parking? And then Matt, maybe you can jump in after that.
Yeah, so we recognize parking is a big topic for the site. It's also very important. The long-term vision of the park is that it will be supported by a robust transit system. But we recognize that right now, Raleigh is very car dependent. And so that we will need some on-site parking. And then, I also want to mention that we are including the bus drop-off along Lake Wheeler Road that Matt illustrated in his great design update. But so the parking lot is being included. We've also been doing a lot of studying of the existing parking spaces that are on the rest of the park site. They are currently leased by the Department of Health and Human Services. So we're working with DHHS on partnership for this, making sure that they have adequate parking during their business hours. So what are the ways that we can utilize the on-site parking in partnership with DHHS? We've also started studying what are the nearby parking decks, with downtown being close by and some of the parking decks on NC State University's Centennial campus. And so that when we do have larger events, that we can partner and use some of those parking decks with parking ride opportunities. Matt, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just say that in terms of, we worked a lot. The parking lot looks kind of simple, but we worked a lot on it just to make sure it was that right balance of, preserving a lot of the big trees around its perimeter and incorporating greenery into it. So it's there. It's a good number that will add a convenient amount right there at the top of the stairs. But it's not so big that it will feel, like a big, going to the mall or something like that, where you're walking through a sea of it. And it will work in conjunction with other lots that are there on the site now, and also that are coming in the future. So it's going to be a dynamic answer over time.
Thanks. So Alex asked, how is this project going to impact the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services currently located on campus? I can take the first step and then anyone else could jump in. The reason we identified the Plaza Play as one of our first projects is that it can be built while DHHS is still on campus. So imagine if you're an employee there, you could spend the day, you could spend your lunch hour enjoying lunch with your colleagues in the picnic grove. So this project can be built while DHHS is still on campus. But longer term, DHHS does have plans to move to another site and they're currently working on those plans. So just as a reminder, the city of Raleigh purchased this property in 2015 and leased back a majority of the buildings to the Department of Health and Human Services. And that lease extends until 2025. The Department of Health and Human Services is actively working on their new headquarters to relocate their employee population. And the city is working with them to make sure that they've got everything they need while they're still on the campus. So Alex, thanks for that question. Elaine asked about bike paths, bike lanes, competition with other modes and cars. Matt, I think you addressed a lot of this in kind of the presentation, but can you just talk a little bit about kind of the design philosophy of separating modes? Oh, you're muted.
Muting. Important point. It came up in every meeting, and actually it changed the plan. The master plan had cars and people kind of entering at the same moment, right at the top of the hill. And what we've done is we've shifted that car entry point off to the west, basically, and removed that conflict. And that was really what we've tried to do is we've tried to disperse the different modal points of entry all around. So there's, first of all, better accessibility, but as less conflict too. I've been riding my bike since, well, longer than most people have been alive, in urban circumstances. So I understand, it from both sides of the aisle on that one. And when I'm driving in my car, I want to kill the bikers, and when I'm riding in my bike, I want to kill the driver. So, like everybody, I kind of get both perspectives. So we really thought about it from every perspective, and really prioritize also public access, but I mean public transport as well.
Great, thanks. William asked, and I think this is a really interesting question, especially during COVID, will the park include walkways wide enough so that couples and families can leisurely stroll in both directions without having to go single file? And I think this also gets to kind of how this park will operate in a COVID, post-COVID world. And so Grayson, if you wanted to jump in, Jay, I know you probably also have some thoughts here, but the pathways, Matt, anyone who wants to jump in on just designing so that it is accommodating, and also people are able to safely distance from each other.
We should go first. I'll just say that path width is something that we spend half our day thinking about. So it will get a lot of thought. It's always a balance between giving a nice sense of connection to the landscape and also not inconveniencing people and, having them kind of, walk, try to sniggle around each other. You will not have to single file on anything except for maybe some little kind of tiny little play feature in the playground. There will not be any single file paths anywhere for sure. So there'll be adequate space to kind of get around a stroller and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I want to add in the future phases, in the future phase 1 projects for Dix Park calls for a multi-use path to connect the very eastern edge of the park, kind of that point where it meets South Saunders and the Rocky Branch Greenway is a multi-use path to connect from that. It goes up through the park, it goes through the Plaza and Play site, and then connects to the farmers market. This project will start to build a portion of that. And also I did see in the questions, and so I'm going to jump a little bit, Kate, because it's related to this. And there is a question that came in that's asking about what will the future of Lake Wheeler Road be like, and how will that be incorporated into the Plaza and Play and overall Dix Park. So it is recognized that there is a need for improvements to Lake Wheeler Road as it exists now. It's a 2-lane road, no curb and gutter, no bike or pedestrian infrastructure. So while this project has not been designed, we've been working closely with the Dix Park Edge Study as their project moves forward. It's going to be looking at some streetscape suggestions. And so I recognize that streetscape may be a planner or designer type term. That means what will the road profile look like? So where will the cars go? How will bikes, where will their space be? Where will the sidewalk space be? And so a lot of this with the Lake Wheeler Road portion, we anticipate will happen in the future once Lake Wheeler Road is improved. And so while there are some unknowns because this is a unfunded and not currently designed project, we are working with our partners, like I said, the EDGE study and also city transportation on how we will work, how the future of Lake Wheeler Road will work with the EDGE study. So when the park opens, there may be one EDGE condition on how the Plaza Play area meets Lake Wheeler Road. But then we know that at some point in the future, Lake Wheeler Road will be improved, and we're accommodating for that potential future change as well.
I could just say, yeah, I mean, I just one thing, just so I think Grayson just made the point, but no one should be worried about a future roadway expansion like destroying the park in any way. We've absolutely planned around that.
Right.
I just want that to be clear.
So Jay, a fun question for you. What are you most excited or looking forward to in the future of the park, and why?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, kind of putting me on the spot here, but I think it's not any of the elements, because I think those are going to be changing. But I think what excites me about this project and what excites me about all of this is what it means for Raleigh, and where it's going to take our city and what it actually can really do. That site historically has been a place of healing and at times not healing. And if you think about that legacy and you think about mental health and you think about the pandemic and what there's a great question about what about this after COVID. One of the few places people are still going is Dix Park, and that a place they can spread out and a place they can see others, albeit 6 feet apart. But maybe not right now as numbers are spiking, but to have that space and to have something that is truly a destination for us that we can gather and we can celebrate, that's exciting. And to be a part of the generation that gets to build it. And when they talk about Raleigh, 100 years from now, and you're looking at Dix Park and it's surrounded by whatever it's surrounded by, this is the group that helped design it. That's what's exciting. And that's what I'm most excited, and why I continue to be a part of this, from the master plan to the community committee, is just to continue to try to be a part of that legacy.
That's a great response. You did bring up something I think really interesting that a lot of people are curious and interested about, and it is the history and legacy of the site. So Matt, you talked a little bit about how we plan to incorporate some of that in the House of Many Porches gardens and others. Can you speak to kind of just some of the ideas around that interpretation of the site's cultural and natural history?
Yeah, I mean, one of the good things about the plan being fairly complex is we have lots of different opportunities for different things. Some of I think it made it pretty clear there's a lot of connection to natural history that the fountain design and the way the planting is incorporated in many different types of planting. We've done a lot of research on the landscapes of Raleigh, going out with experts like Tom Earnhardt and others to just learn about the landscapes of North Carolina. So that's something. What's great about the house is it's real history. It's not fabricated, so that's a wonderful thing, and we're having it very authentically restored. So that will be great. And then how elements could then be incorporated into the garden as an experience. What's nice about incorporating history in a garden, I think, is it's a more personal or intimate experience, and people can choose to interact with it how they want. And so I think there's something just kind of lovely about that. And then, there's other connections just with living the world the way it is now beyond nature. If we can get you know, creative minds involved, artists and craftsmen and people like that. I think that will make it another way of, you know, really connecting to the neighborhood and to the culture of the state.
Great, thank you. So there are a number of questions that are coming through about accessibility, and Matt, you touched a lot about this in the presentation. I think it's similar to what Jay was discussing about the through line of equity. This is not just a checkbox. It is really a fundamental part of the design of the park itself, and equity, accessibility, sustainability are kind of foundational to every decision that the design team is making. But can you talk a little bit about particularly accessible play and how that's working here and how it's worked in some of your other projects?
Yeah, there's kind of a requirement or a kind of a standard that you should meet, and we always exceed that in terms of accessible play. And you really need to think about it not just from, you know, wheelchairs or one way or the other, but really many different things. Like one of the things that uh, I like to think about is just like the mental state of somebody in terms of what kind of where are they emotionally at that point in time when they come to play in the playground, and what are they gonna be able to find a space like literally that they're comfortable in, you know, in relationship to other people. So we're thinking about accessibility as a dynamic thing because people's you know, abilities change over life too. And so you don't want to make it a static thing, kind of just addressing one kind of condition. So we look at it from every way we could imagine. And then we also, just in case, we also have other experts come in and check it. We actually hire outside independent evaluators basically who come in and measure things and check things and look at it through their own eyes in terms of, you know, making sure it meets the standards that we're going for.
Great.
I would just add with the public input piece in terms of equity and accessibility, lived experience is critical. And that's why this group really needs the input of those on this call and those on this Zoom, and passing this YouTube link on to others so they can watch it and provide those lived experience feedbacks of what really matters to them as well.
That's a great point. Thank you, Jay. I think, you know, I think just as we kind of wrap up tonight, I would just love to hear kind of from the whole group what you're thinking about in terms of what you're excited about in terms of next steps. So there's the process, there's the project, the design is continuing to evolve. Grayson will provide kind of the how people can stay involved moving forward, but are there some big milestones, Matt, we can start with you, that we should look forward to coming up in the project?
Well, schematic design is very important because you're getting all the elements, you're figuring out where they are, you're figuring out, you know, how much of each, but then there's so much more. I always remember this joke that my mom used to say. She designed the kitchen because she decided that the sink would be there and you'd look out the window over there. And I remember at one point having explained to her that that was important, but that wasn't designing the kitchen. That was just getting part of it right. And so there's so much more to do, and there's so many different things to think through, and there's a great opportunity for people to give feedback and point us to opportunities. You know, say you know, materials, places to visit, get inspired by. But there's just a lot of things to kind of start to work through. But also we want to hear, because it's not too late, if the elements seem right. I think that we've tried very hard to make sure that we have the elements that we need without overloading the site or pushing it beyond the capacity. You know, giving enough generous spaces that aren't over programmed, and then some very interesting, highly programmed areas, and mixing that all together. So we want to hear that people feel like that's right, and I hope that's right. There's time to adjust that, and for sure. But then we're just going to start to really work on the detail of things and work with some of our architect friends on detailing out the architecture and all of that. Engineering, there's tons of engineering to do. And so that will be, further development.
So
Yeah,
go ahead, Grayson.
I was just going to say a little quick something, and that is one of the things that I'm really excited about with the design and what is coming out of this is that it really seems like there, as Matt and many others have said during this meeting, is there's places for a range of ages in this. So when we talk about play, a lot of discussion around play is automatically about children and families and caregivers. But there's also a lot of population in Raleigh, or probably anywhere, but Raleigh has a very big population of young professionals, or we also have a lot of colleges and universities in the area. And so we're also having conversations about how they can be incorporated or how they can experience this place, and also teenagers. And so I think that that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. And as we continue to evolve the design and really see these renderings and how this place comes to life, I just really am enjoying seeing how a range of ages will be able to come in and have an exciting time in this place.
I think the only thing I would add is just to emphasize what Matt said is about there's just opportunities. I think, Jay mentioned what the park has meant during the time of the pandemic. I know that I've been out there many times, and I've seen many of people that are on this right now, on the screen now, and probably many of you there, as that's been my place of solace. And so as we think through what community and what opportunities look like, I really strongly encourage people to give good feedback when it comes to that. And just to echo what Grayson said, I've never talked so much about swings for adults as I have in these conversations. So nothing is really off the table, right, to become possible. And so I think as we move into how to stay involved, keep that in mind.
Jay, I'm going to give you the last word here before we move into closing remarks.
Oh gosh, I'll just kind of leave it as what I'm excited about is with the community committee is outcome accountability for what the community wants. Our role as a community committee is to be a conduit for what the community really needs. And so our job is to ensure that Matt's team, the council, gets the feedback they need, and we can hold them accountable for the outcomes we want.
Great. So we'll switch. Hillary, if you'll bring up the slides, and Grayson can take us through to the end of the meeting.
Yes. Actually, I believe this slide is Shauna before I get going.
It is. I was going to say, don't lose me. So really just to restate what we've said many, many times today, public input is essential, and we want it. From driving concept to design to what could be something that's been overlooked or something that's really given you pause or concern. If this is really going to be a place where there's true community. So I encourage you to check out the various websites to provide feedback, to check out the studies. There are summaries. If you haven't looked at the master plan, go back and look at that. There's, I think, a 9 or 13 page executive summary there. And just continue to think and dream big. And now Grayson.
All right. Thanks, Shauna. So after this meeting tonight, there will be a post-meeting survey up on publicinput.com/Plaza Play. It will be up for a couple of weeks. We will have that posted by Friday. So as Shauna mentioned, please check back on the engagement website. I also want to mention that we were not able to get to all the questions, and we had many, many great questions. We will have a document that is shared on the public input website and the dixpark.org website for the project page of Plaza and Play to address all the questions that were submitted tonight. So also thank you to everyone that joined in and participated and sent us questions. And then I also want to mention that this meeting is being recorded. So if you know of anybody that was not able to join us this evening and would like to watch it, or you missed a certain portion, you can go back to our website and watch it there as well. And I also want to mention a kind of fun engagement opportunity, and that's the chalk challenge. So we want you to post a photo of yourself with a chalk drawing showing what you love to do in parks or where you hope to find in Plaza and Play. And there's just a few things to get you to think about here. But we do want you to be imaginative. You certainly don't have to do this style of chalk drawing. And we hope that you will tag us on social media with @DixPark. And you can also submit your submissions through the public input website. I also wanted to mention that I have done a few site walks over the past several months, and I'm going to be doing a few more. It's a fun way to get out and enjoy walking around the edge of the Plaza and Play site. Of course, we follow safety precautions with social distancing and health checks and wearing masks properly, but we will be posting those as well. And with that, I want to say thank you again. Our consultant team has worked very hard. It was great to have Shauna and Jay from the community committee join us. And I hope to see you all soon, if virtual or via the public engagement website. So thanks and have a good evening.